On today's episode of PhotoKitchen, I share with you every photographer and filmmaker's worst nightmare, losing all of their data. Hello and welcome to episode number 50 of PhotoKitchen. I'm your humble host, MD Welch, and today we're talking about data loss, data prevention, backup plans, the really visually cool things that you come to PhotoKitchen for. I'm sorry, this is going to be dry. This is going to try to be as short as possible, but it will be long because we're talking about backup plans and how to prevent losing all of your data. Now, a year ago, I did in fact lose all of my data, every job, every portfolio piece, every reel, every current job that I was working on for clients, it all went away. I literally watched it happen right in front of my eyes. Now, I'm here to tell you, here's the end of the story. It ended on a good note. I was able to recover all of my data without having to spend a lot of money. But it was a stressful, taxing period. And I want to share with you my backup plan that made sure that I had my data and what I do different now because of that massive catastrophe that I suffered. I'm going to keep this as low tech as possible. I'm not going to try to get into a bunch of numbers and terabytes and RAID and JOBD and all those other kind of things. I'm going to try to give you a plan that will work with every budget and every use or need for you as a photographer, a filmmaker, or just backing up your data on your computer. Now, I want to start with the fact that I've been an IT professional for nearly 30 years of my life. And while I no longer work in the IT industry, I do advise photographers and filmmakers on backup plans, workflow, archive strategies. It's something that I enjoy helping my fellow photographers, regardless if they're professionals or passionate photographers. The amount of data doesn't make a difference. I love helping people out with this particular process. Back in my days of IT, I watched many people lose their data and never recover it again. And I don't want that to happen to my colleagues or my friends, and I don't want it to happen to you. So I'm basically sharing with you what I share with them in this video. Now, every good backup plan has three components, actually four. I found a fourth component in this year-long process of recovering from losing all of my data. And I'll get to that towards the end of the video. But the first three components are redundancy, organization, and frequency. Now, the fourth component, by the way, is convenience. And again, I'll talk about that at the end. And I think now that that fourth component really needs to be part of the process. So let's start with frequency, the easiest concept here to grasp, but still something people struggle with. The amount of clients that I've had or friends that don't back up frequently would stagger you. I'll go help them out on their computer. There's some sort of data loss, hard drive failure, and I go, do you back up your data? And they go, absolutely. And I go, great, where is it? It's in that folder. I look at the folder and I'm like, this is 30 days old. This is 60 days old. And they'll say, yeah, I know I'm supposed to back up more frequently. I just forgot to do it. I don't do it often enough. That's unacceptable. First of all, you can get software that will schedule backups for you. So that's my first piece of advice. Get some piece of software that you could schedule a backup. Sometimes it comes with hard drives that you purchase. Other times it's just an additional purchase that you have to do, but get something that you could schedule backups. I also highly recommend getting a backup software that when it schedules your backups, if you have data that's been deleted or modified, that it puts it into a separate area so you could review that before you choose to actually officially delete that. That's a good solution. Also, you want to back up after every large job. When I come home from a photo shoot, when I come home from a film shoot, I get that media imported into my computer, and after the import is done and I've verified that the import is good, I will then run a backup. My backups happen at 2 o'clock in the morning every day. I leave my gear on, and I also back up after every job. That's my 1-2 punch. If I have a big job that I've just wrapped up and I'm worried about maybe losing that job before that 2 a.m., I will then do an immediate backup as well. We don't have a lot of indications when hard drive failures are going to happen. So it can verge on the notion of paranoia, but I have found that there's no level of paranoia when it comes to backing up your data correctly. So frequency, back up on a regular basis, and also back up after you've just imported files to your computer. And at least you know your backups are doing their job. Don't spend money on hardware and software solutions that you're not actually utilizing because you're not backing up frequently. The second component of a good backup system is organization. The thing that people don't do very well, but also the thing that doesn't cost them a lot of money. The amount of data that gets lost or misplaced because of poor organization is staggering, and it is something that's completely and totally preventable. Get organized. Separate your personal work from your professional work. Leverage technology and programs like Lightroom and Capture One to utilize metadata. Also leverage your video editing software. Maybe it'll help you find clips that are not being used in a project that you can delete. You can also verify data that is good with using a lot of these other programs. But more importantly, just know where your stuff is stored, right? Get a good organization going on. If you're doing this for a living, have some sort of system that separates your clients. If you're doing it for passion, separate by different genres or locations or subject matter, but get organized. Also, part of organization comes into the fact of managing how much data or room that you have left on a hard drive. Has this happened to you? Because it's happened to me. You get done with the job, you got about, 200 gigabytes of data you need to import, and you got 75 gigs of available space. Not managing your data and making sure that you have enough room for that next job, that can cause a lot of issues because people will rush and they'll delete things they shouldn't delete, and it causes all sorts of problems. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking right now because I hear it all the time. Okay, I promise that I'm going to get organized. It's just so much data. I've been doing this for so long. Things are scattered all over the place. And I hear you. And when I am told that face to face by every photographer, I look at them and I go, I understand. It's a lot to deal with. It's a big problem. It's a big task. But in my brain, I'm thinking, you are not prepared for the 7th level of Dante's Inferno you will encounter if all of a sudden you have a massive hard drive failure or data loss, and you got to figure out what was backed up, what is secure, what hard drive went where. It is a nightmare. Getting organized is key to making sure that your data stays intact. So the third component to a good backup solution is redundancy. How well your data is protected if you were to lose it in one location, do you have it backed up in another location? Now, when I talk about locations, I'm talking about two different types of storage. You have local storage and remote storage. Local storage are hard drives connected to your computer. Maybe they're not directly connected to your computer. Maybe it's a network drive in another room, but they're in the building. They're in the office. They're in the home. Remote storage is a cloud-based internet storage. You're usually paying a monthly or yearly fee to a company, say like Carbonite or Backblaze, and all of your data is uploaded to their servers. And if something terrible was to happen, your data would be secure. I always ask this question of all of my clients. Is your data secure if fire or flood was to consume your home, or somebody was to break into your house and steal all of your electronic devices? When my clients answer yes, it's usually because they have a remote solution. And it's only because of a remote solution that I have all of my data. I leaned on my remote solution and it provided me with the ability to keep my business open and running. If I didn't pay that fee, I probably would be out of business. I'd be looking at a new career. I don't know if I could have faced my clients, and probably actually had gone to court too by losing all of the data that I had acquired for them. So remote solutions are great. They do have a few limitations, but they do have a huge amount of pros. One thing I will stress is there's a very low financial barrier to doing a remote backup. It could be $30, $50 a month. It could be cheaper if you do a year fee. And the good news is you have some sort of backup without buying any hardware and having to manage that. You're having somebody else do the job for you. And again, that's what saved me. Now, there are a few cons to the cloud-based backup storage solutions, and I found this out with my data loss last year. One big problem with cloud-based solutions is, first of all, getting your data uploaded in the first place. When I signed on to, I'm using Backblaze, when I signed up for Backblaze and I started to upload, that upload took months. I can't remember how many terabytes that I had. It might have been 8, it might have been 10. It was a lot though. And it took a very long time for that data to upload to their servers. Most internet speeds for residential networks are very slow when it comes to upload. And unless you're paying a lot of money for that, even if you are paying a lot of money, it's still much slower than download speeds. So it could be, instead of months, it could be weeks, but it is going to be a significant amount of time. Now, I do want to say, if you're not doing a remote backup, start now, because it will take time to upload. And again, there's so many pros to a remote backup solution, but do understand there could be a significant amount of time where you are operating essentially without a net. For me, it was a few months. Now, the other problem with remote backup solutions is when your hard drives fail, right? When your local redundancy fails on you and you have to rely on that remote solution, then what will happen is it will take you a very long time to download it, because you can't download 8 terabytes of data in one shot. That's not how the internet works. One thing I will say, that knowing what I know now, I would pay the money for these companies to send you hard drives. They will physically throw something in the mail for you and you'll get it and you'll have your data there and you can just offload it. You're talking about a week of turnaround to get all your data back opposed to months. You usually get send the hard drive back, get a refund on that. There's a small fee that they'll charge you for it, but believe me, it's worth it. It took me the better part of 2.5 months to get all of my data back. Why? Well, I had to download the stuff that I was immediately working on for my clients, but then I had to slowly start to download things. And because I can't download a lot of stuff at once, I had to kind of piecemeal things. I had to verify it and check on it. Now, my local storage, and this is where I get into a little technical data here, I was using something called a RAID 5. It's a bunch of drives that make the computer think it's one volume. But that system allows for one drive to fail and the rest of the drives will pick up the slack. RAID 5 allows for one drive failure, RAID 6 allows for 2. There's all sorts of other types of RAIDs out there, but those are ones that people use the most. Well, I had one drive that was failing. I knew that it was failing. I sent in for a warranty, got the other drive. And when I went to go rebuild the RAID, that's where the catastrophic failure happened. I want to stress something for all of the people out there that rely on RAIDs for their local redundancy. I've had 2 RAID failures now in the last year, and both times I wasn't able to rebuild the RAID. Now, the first time, which was my massive amount of data that was lost, that was the remote backup saving my butt, and it was 2.5 months to get all my data back up in line. The recent one, which just actually happened in the last 30 days due to a hard drive failure, that data was secure. I was able to back it up and then replace the hard drives and everything was fine. So what's happened in the years since is I don't solely rely on remote backup as my main means of redundancy. Sure, I have redundancy built into the RAID, but as I've just demonstrated, it didn't save my butt. It had a catastrophic failure. And if you have a catastrophic failure, now you only have one level to it. What I have done is I've introduced that fourth component, and that is convenience. I have purchased additional hard drives that are also doing local backups. That's all that they're doing. They're not part of a RAID system. They're not part of a network solution. All that they're doing is backing up my data. So now if my RAID or something else fails, as it did 30 days ago, I'm able to immediately just swap out drives, try to rebuild the RAID, didn't work. And if it doesn't work, I could just reformat the drives, construct a RAID again, and then copy my data from my local backup. It's much faster, it's much more reliable, and sure, I want that remote just in case of the plagues of Egypt or thief in the night scenario happens to me. But the local backup is far more dependable and resilient and a lot faster too. Again, 2.5 months opposed to, I think I was down for a day 30 days ago. That was it. That's all that happened as far as that hard drive failure goes. So I really like having that local solution, and that is the convenience component of it. Now, is it more money? Absolutely. But I will tell you that 2.5 months of not having my data all on my computer and having to not only work, but also recover data at the exact same time, it took years off of my life. There's no amount of money that I can actually assign to the stress that I endured with that. And certainly the $1,000 or so that I have spent to construct a quality local backup to also supplement my remote backup, it's pennies compared to the stress that I went through. So I really like having this fourth component now, this component of convenience. I think it's a good one to look at, but if it's not in the budget, at least have your redundancy be in a remote solution because it does cover a lot of those worst case scenarios. Just understand there's a time factor there. Another time factor thing to bring up is if I come home from one of those jobs, as I mentioned earlier with frequency, and I start to back up my data, for my remote backup to finish is usually a day or 2, especially if it's a big job, where I know now with my local backup that the local backup has happened, at least my data is backed up. And if I had to format cards and run out the door and shoot another job, at least I know I'm covered in one spot. Yeah, are those plagues of Egypt and thief in the night scenario waiting for me? Sure, but that remote backup's happening in the background. It would be done in a day or 2, but my local backup at least makes sure that my data is safe and I can sleep better at night. So that is my 3 to 4 components of backup solutions. I know, very dry, very boring. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully it helps you begin the process if you haven't already started so, or you have started it, but you need to refine it. Hopefully it helps you out. If it does, please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. I promise they're not all this dry and boring. And until next time, this is MD Welch wishing you all the best from the Photo Kitchen.